Hi, this is part 2 of Interview Like a Pro. In part 1, we talked a lot about doing your research and getting prepared for that portion of the interview process. In this piece, we'll really talk more about you. So our checklist for part 2 is being really familiar with your own resume and developing vignettes, short stories to give information about your career, practicing standard interview questions, knowing what they are, and fine-tuning your video settings and skills. So the first question that is always asked is, tell me about yourself. And people have trouble with this one because they're unsure of where to start, where to end, how much information they should really give. I think a way to look at it is present, past, and future. You can rearrange those in any order that you want, but just having a short piece, probably about a minute, giving some of your background. Shouldn't be shorter than half a minute. It surely should not be 2 minutes. You don't want to give too much information in that piece. And if they want more information, like tell me something that I can't see on your resume, then you can give that as a secondary thing. But you don't want to give all your information in the first question of the interview. It's important to know your own background. And that seems like, well, of course I know my own background. But some interviewers walk you through the entire resume and expect you to give a little story about each role. You know, what you did there, why you left. So you need to be prepared to give that short summary. I was at XYZ company for 2 years. During that time, I had 2 roles. I was promoted after my first 9 months in the company. My primary responsibilities were the thing I'm most proud of is, and the reason why I left is that I was recruited to my next company. There are a number of types of interview questions. The most standard ones are the first 3 here. General, which is just tell me about yourself, why you're interested in our company, why you left jobs, those sorts of things. Behavioral are questions about what you did in the past in a specific situation. And usually they are positive or negative facing. So you always need to be prepared in each direction on those. A story about something that went really well and potentially a story about something that did not go as well as you'd hoped. Situational questions are about something that would happen in the future. What would you do if you saw a coworker do something unethical? You want to treat these well, but pretty lightly. The obvious answer is not to say, I would tell my boss immediately, because you need to go a little deeper with what you would do and think about it a little bit more. This 4th category doesn't happen very often, and really what they want to know with these kinds of questions is just how your mind works, how you put things together. Another type of interview questions that we will not go into any detail about, there are books written about these types of questions. You'll generally find them if you are interviewing for management consulting roles, strategy roles in a company, or some high-end finance like investment banking, maybe private equity. There are 3 different kinds. There's a ton of information out there about it that talks about the different kinds and gives some resources for looking into them deeper. In finance interviews, they often want to check about your advanced Excel skills and your financial modeling skills. So sometimes they will give tests over there. In information systems, they might go deep on coding questions or very technical questions or logic problems. Negative facing questions, they really have no right to know the worst thing that ever happened to you. Much like tell me about a weakness. They really don't need to know your biggest weakness, but giving an example of something that you work on in that case is a good idea. And maybe that it was a problem previously, but you've been working on it and something like that. An example might be time management skills. I found that if I put everything in Outlook, I had a much better probability of getting everything done than just trying to remember it. It's been very, very helpful. Something like that. So your strategy about these kinds of questions is to think about them before you go in. Think about some examples, how you can lay it out, not throwing yourself under the bus, and always having a positive ending to the story. Maybe it's something that you learned might be that positive. When you're answering questions, you need to look at the question from the hiring manager's perspective. So they're trying to figure out what you might do in their situation. So don't think about it just totally from your perspective, but keep their perspective in mind. And tell them how what you've done and what you've learned can help in their organization. So a great way to answer behavioral questions, there are many different ways, many different acronyms. I think one of the most simple is CAR. Circumstance, give a description of what the situation was. The A is what action did you take, and the R is what happened after that. What recommendation did you make? Was the recommendation accepted? What was the outcome? What did you learn? That kind of ties the whole thing up. Here's an example, a light example of a customer who was upset because they didn't get their test results. The action piece is that the individual dug deeper to see what happened and helped it go in the right direction so that they could get their lab results. And as a result, the patient was very happy, gave them a positive review on social media, and the manager was happy about the initiative that they took. So it doesn't have to be complicated, but it just has to tell the whole story in a succinct manner. These are the top 10 most common interview questions. The tell me about yourself that we talked about. What do you know about our company or why you're interested? Those kinds of things almost are always asked. Strengths and weaknesses. Again, on the strengths, give an example of what the strength is, one strength, and an example of that. Many people answer it giving like 5 strengths. And 5 strengths, this doesn't really tell the person very much about you. The same with a weakness. Again, something that I work on is. So these are pretty typical. We hear from students that you're never going to get asked all 10, but you'll probably be asked some subset of these. And if you're prepared for these, then it makes the other ones that they might ask that you have to really think on the fly a little bit easier. So top 3, what do you know about us? Why are you interested in this position? Why should we hire you? The first 2 of those we talked about in part 1. Your research will really help you with those. And the why should we hire you is that last component of the 3+3 that really hits why. And you need to really be able to nail these questions. If you can't answer these 3 questions, the interviewers are very reluctant. They'll go further, the interview will last longer, but you'll lose their interest and you'll have to try real hard to recover it. Most of the interviews that you'll have right now will probably be video. And you need to have another layer of professionalism when you're doing these. I know that you are on Zoom all the time, but I think it's a much more informal situation than an interview. So really make sure that what your background looks like and that it's uncluttered and that your surroundings are quiet, which that isn't always an easy situation. So, maybe you have to go someplace else for the interview, but make sure it has a great internet connection. Figure out how far you should be, your face from the camera. Make sure that your webcam is at eye level. I've seen lots of interviews where people were looking down, not a good look, or it captured them just at an odd angle. So just try and make sure that it is really right for you. We have a platform called Big Interview, which is a great platform. You can record mock interviews on it. It has questions for every industry, every role practically. And so you can just kind of pick one and it will ask you questions and you can answer them. It also has a feature in it that you can do, which I highly recommend. It's an artificial intelligence feature, and it can judge your lighting, your eye contact, if you're talking too fast, if you're talking too slow. It can judge those kinds of things, and that is very helpful because you're probably not going to get that feedback from somebody who's interviewing you, so it really helps you practice very well. And the close, make sure that you tell them that you want the job, even if you're not 100% sure that you want the job and why you want it, because you may be lukewarm at that point or just exhausted from the interview. But if you tell them you want the job and why you want the job, then you have the opportunity to really think about it after the interview. And you always, if they make an offer, always have the ability to not accept it, but you have to make them feel good about you wanting it. Please feel free to reach out to BCC if you want to do in-person or Zoom mock interviews. The people at BCC will be very happy to help you. So good luck, and thank you for joining.